Hello, it's Claire here. This is the next in my series of what to expect when you go no contact. And I'm going to talk to you today about really that they're going to get angry. Okay. So if you're anything like me, when it came to my narcissistic father, there was always this kind of barely concealed anger. Okay. And my father wasn't the like shouting, angry kind of narcissist. He would express his rage in the silent treatment, in stonewalling, in his body language, in his facial expressions and things like that instead. So he was very subtle with it. That's why it was so difficult to really identify what was actually going on. So but there was always this undercurrent of fear that I had when it came to him. And I think this comes from being raised within that environment. Is as a child, I knew that my survival depended on my father. And it was nothing that he said. He never had to say that. But there was many, many things that he did which made me feel that way. And I think what happens is that there's this the kind of the three foundations of a relationship with a narcissist are fear, obligation, and guilt, as I discussed in the previous video. But in this one, we're going to focus on fear, because I think what happens is we are so afraid of the narcissist's wrath that we continue contact with them. Okay. And there's always this kind of undercurrent of fear, or this undercurrent of like a threat underneath it all the time. Okay. And to so that we feel a little bit more comfortable, we will go along with what the narcissist wants to, so that we don't have to feel afraid. Okay. Now, I think what we're really afraid of is like incurring their wrath. Okay. Their absolute like so much of their anger, and however it's expressed, and we're so afraid of that. That's what really came up for me at the beginning of no contact. Was I was really afraid of what my dad was going to do, because for the first time in my life I'd actually taken a stand against him. I'd actually drawn a line in the sand and said, this isn't happening. This stops now. Okay. And I'd only done this one time previously. I'd gone no contact previously, but I got reeled back in again because my mum had a health scare. My parents were still together, so they came as a pair. So there was that. I was always afraid of what was going to happen, and it was really bad at the start. Okay, because it felt like he was going to be all the things. Okay, now, like I said in the previous video, and like I've discussed in other videos, like narcissists inflate themselves. Okay, if they are physically abusive, they are dangerous. Okay, so get out, get safe. Okay, whatever you have to do, get out. Even if you have to leave everything behind, walk out, make sure that you're safe. Okay, because they can escalate. Okay. However, narcissists that aren't physically abusive, they will inflate themselves. They will do all the things to make themselves appear like they've got all this power over you. Okay. So the way to help yourself cope with this, okay, is first of all, as time goes on, you start to realize that there's nothing going to happen. Okay. And so it's a time thing, but it's also like realizing that they don't have the power over you that they gave you the impression that they did. Okay. So they're going to inflate themselves up to be this, kind of godlike person who can do whatever, and you're afraid of them. But that's not actually the truth about them. They're like the Wizard and the Wizard of Oz, hidden behind the curtain, using all the special effects, making themselves out to be much more powerful and in control than they actually are, because really they rely on us to go along with them in order for them to get their power and control. And if we say stop, we're denying them that power and control any longer. We've been complicit in it previously, but now we're saying stop. That's enough. So I just invite you to consider just thinking about, what is it that you're actually afraid of? And as part of that, okay, so I think one of my fears was that if I went no contact with my dad, it was going to result in me going no contact with my whole family. And I think that's because a part of me knew that they were all kind of tied in on it. They were all kind of enmeshed in my dad's toxicity. So that was one of my fears. And that's actually what happened. So it started off with no contact with my dad. And then my mum went with my dad, toxic pair, works for them, but really toxic marriage they've got there. And then one by one, other family members dropped off bit by bit. Some of whom that I didn't have much contact with to start with just stopped completely. Others that I'd had a bit of contact with just stopped completely as well. I did try with a couple of family members, but it didn't get anywhere, and I was disappointed in that. But I think part of me always knew. So that was what I was afraid of, and that's what happened. But I survived. And unfortunately, what you realize when you go through narcissistic abuse, especially when it's a parent, is it's not just the narcissistic parent. If you're the scapegoat of the family, you are the narcissist scapegoat, and you're also the scapegoat of the rest of the family. The narcissist has set you as that's your role as a scapegoat. Nobody else wants to be scapegoat because they know how bad it is. And then what happens is they will scapegoat you also because it keeps you in the role of the scapegoat. So the whole family's tied in on it, okay? The whole family's in competition with each other, trying desperately to survive. It's not a healthy environment for a child to be raised in. It's toxic, it's competition, it's jealousy, which is all fostered and nurtured by the narcissist. And that's not just between the children. That's also between the other parent and the children too. Okay, so now, what I suggest you do now, one, I can guarantee you, if you have any kind of ties with a narcissist, okay, so if you have any kind of financial ties with them, they've signed for a loan for a car, they pay your car insurance, they pay your mobile phone bill, I don't know, whatever if they pay anything for you, or if they have your pets, or if they have anything that you value that's got any like monetary value, or anything that's got a sentimental value. Okay, now what I invite you to do is, if you're no contact, is to extract yourself out of that. Okay, so make another arrangement for your pets. If your pets have to live with them, go and find another home for them to live in. If you've got any kind of valuables with them, make an excuse why you need to get that. If they're holding like your passport or anything, say that you need to renew it or something, you need it for an ID for something, so that you can get it back off them, because they will use these things against you. If whatever it is has any importance to you, they will use it against you. Okay, and even if it's something really tenuous, like they didn't give you any money, but they're like the guarantor on a car, or whatever it is, or for your rent, or whatever it is, extricate yourself so you're not tied to them. Now, this may mean in some ways you miss out. This may mean that you go from having a newer car to you have to go for an older car that's maybe not so reliable. But I will tell you, it's much better that you have that older and maybe less reliable car than it is that you have the new one and the narcissist can use that against you. So if they've got anything of any value to you whatsoever, emotional, financial, sentimental value, anything that they've got, then get it off them, okay? And take yourself out of any other connections that you've got with them, okay? Before you go no contact. That's the best idea. Because I can guarantee you, anything that they have over you, they will use against you. They will want you to be back in contact, okay? They will do anything, okay? And it may not actually even be like a thing. It may be that you get a message from them or from someone on their behalf saying that a family member that you love is really ill. And if that happens, you go direct to that family member, or you go directly to the family member who's closest connected with them, not to your narcissistic parent. Okay, now they will use anything they can against you. All right, and it'll be when you go no contact that they'll be thinking, oh, hang on, they got this with it, like I've got this, I've still got hold of that. They will hold things hostage. And that might be your pet. Sorry, that might be your pet, that might be your finances, it might be something of sentimental value, it might be something of a monetary value. Whatever it is, they will use it against you. I 100% guarantee. So extricate that first before you go no contact. And if you have to lie about why you're doing it, lie. You have to, the priority is to disentangle yourself from them so they can't use these things against you, because it doesn't matter how tenuous it is, they will use it against you. They will say, oh, I've got a letter from someone to say that, say you've got like, they've signed, they're like guarantoring a loan for you. I've got a letter from this people and they say that they want to renew your loan and I'm not sure that I can do it. So you need to contact me because else I'm not going to be guarantor for you. Find a way, even if it means in some way your life is like compromised a little bit, even if it means that you have to make little changes into your life to accommodate that difference, even if you have to go without a mobile phone or whatever it is, do that. It's much better than them having ammunition to use against you, because they're going to have all the emotional ammunition against you. You can't do anything about that. They're going to do everything they can to spike your fear, your obligation, and your guilt. They've used those 3 tools for the whole of your life to manipulate you. And they're going to come at you. They're going to use all of them. Even if using them, by using them, I mean they don't actually contact you, right? Or nobody else contacts you that's connected with them. That can even be just they give you the silent treatment. That's how they could use it. So this is how some narcissists work. Some will go on an all-out offensive. They're contacting you. They're getting everybody else to contacting you. They're piling on the pressure. You've got this loan. We still got your dog. What do we do with your baby photos? All that stuff. They'll use all that stuff, and others will just go absolutely silent and hope that they trigger enough fear in you that their silence will be the weapon that will be used against you, that will get back in contact with them. Okay? Now, it's very important too. I think no contact, that's no contact. That's no contact at all. That's no responding to text messages. That's no sending Mother's Day cards. That's no sending gifts for Christmas. That's no contact whatsoever. Okay? No contact. And that also means, conversely, if they send a card, they send a gift, you don't open it either. So you're not sending anything to them, and you're not receiving anything from them. Now, sometimes they'll find ways around these things. So they'll find a way to get things delivered to you, or they'll put something like on your doorstep, or get somebody to put something on your doorstep, and then they know that you've got it, but it's like skirting, like finding a way around it, you know, like they put it in the post and they don't know whether or not they got it. They'll find a way around it. They'll always find a way around it to make you, to try to get you, to try to tweak that fear, obligation, and guilt again, to get you to get back in contact with them. So it's really important to have what I call a protection plan. Okay, and that protection plan is going through all the different scenarios of what could happen in the future. Okay, and this is for you, your husband or wife, and your children. Okay, so this applies to all of you. Okay, because a narcissistic parent won't just be after you. They may well actually be after your children. And that may sound really threatening, but that's the truth of it. They are after your children. Now, my mother didn't care about me. She was only interested in my son. And that was because he was a perfect target for her abuse. Children, narcissistic grandparents will go after children. And not because they love or care of them, not because they want to support them and want to love on them and all the rest of it. It's because they want power and control. And over a child, their power and control is 100 times more than it is over their own children. They can manipulate those children. They can mold them into what they want them to be. They can control them much more than they can their adult children. Okay, so this is a protection plan for you, your husband or wife, and your children. Okay. And this involves every scenario. So this involves a scenario of we get a phone call. What do? We get a package or a letter. What do? We get them, they come and knock on the door, or someone acting on their behalf. What do? Or it could be, if you live like close to them, what do we do if we see them in town? And then everybody knows what to do, because this is something to discuss with the family. Okay, with younger children, they don't need to be discussed, but the parents need to discuss between the two of them. This is what's going to happen if. Okay, and however you do that is up to you. But the only way to maintain your no contact is to be consistently no contact, and that means not opening post. That means not opening those parcels. That means not responding to those phone calls or messages. And that means not opening the door when they ring on it, or when somebody else knocks on your door who you know is acting on their behalf, and you know who these people are. Okay? So it's really important to discuss this between, so my husband and I, we have a code word, okay? Because what would happen was my parents, they did call on me once, special trip, but after that, they happened to be passing as they were going on their winter holidays. So they would call in on their way past, and then a couple of months later on their way back, they call past again. And this was a relatively frequent thing that would happen. They weren't putting themselves out. They weren't making a special visit to us. They didn't want us to think that they cared enough to actually make a special trip to come to see us to sort this out. They'd already done that, and my dad had dropped out. Anyway, so we came up with a plan, and we had, the code word that we had was crocodiles. Now, that's not a word that you use very often in conversation, so it's not a word that we could get confused. And I knew that if I received a text message, or I got a voice message, or I had a phone call from my husband, the first word that he would use, the only word he would use, would be crocodiles. And I would know to stay away. So we had two incidences. Once when I was out, he just messaged me to say crocodiles, and I was busy doing something else. And then I phoned him after I'd done my errands, whatever it was in town, and he said, "It's okay, they've gone now, you can come back," which I did. And another occasion, we were actually home, and my parents pulled up and walked down the driveway, and my husband saw them, came back into the house, shouted crocodiles, and then we had a plan from there that was lock the front door, make sure all the windows are shut, get the dogs in from the back garden, because I didn't trust them not to let my dogs out or cause chaos with them. Got the dogs in, locked all the doors, and then we went and sat in my son's bedroom, which was like at the back of the house, because it was like the front opened out onto the road. Anyway, that was the most private way. They couldn't knock on the window and what have you. So that's what we did. Okay, so that was our code word, was crocodiles. And I still noted that we haven't seen them. They haven't known our last two addresses. So the chances of it happening again, but I do know if my husband says crocodiles, it's because they're there, and we take whatever action is required. And actually, to be honest, even now, after nearly 8 years, my action would be just to avoid them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see them, because they've got nothing. If they got no, it's been 8 years. They've got nothing to say to me that's going to make any difference to anything, because they're 8 years too late. Really. So get your protection plan sorted out. And when it came to post, like letters, cards, packages, I would get my husband to open them. On one occasion, one of the letters said, "Oh, we'll be coming by next week to see you," and we made sure we were out that weekend, so there was not a chance that they would see us. So sometimes these communications can actually tell you what their plans are, so that you can make plans accordingly. The best thing is to not be there, because it's much nicer to be away and blah blah than it is to be like waiting for the doorbell to go and wondering if it's them the whole time. And the thing always was, if they ring on the door, not to answer it, because my husband did answer the door once, and they just pushed past him and came into the house and started to speak to me. So they won't respect if your husband or wife opens the door and says they don't want to see you. They won't respect that. They won't respect that. And the other thing as well is, I was speaking to a client, and she said, "Oh, I thought about calling the police and calling like a refuge thing." And I said, "No, don't do that. The best thing is to prevent any contact happening, okay? Because if you call the police or you call anybody else, they're just going to love the drama that comes from it. And potentially, if you know, if things like escalate and things carry on and there's some sort of case going on or whatever with the police, then even indirectly you're still having contact with a narcissist, and they're still getting in the way and like interfering in your life. Okay, so I've covered postage, letters, phone calls you can just ignore. Obviously, you know, mobile phones got ID on them now. Even if you pick up the phone and they're phoning on a different number, or they're using somebody else's phone to call you, somebody who you do want to speak to, you can always hang up. Okay, you can always hang up. Emails sometimes go to spam, so if you know that you've got a spam from them, get your partner to read it through and make sure there's nothing in there that they need to know about, that you need to know about. Now, I say all this, right? I didn't do that. It took me 6 months to stop opening my mum's letters, because I think that there was still a little bit of hope in me that maybe she'd realised what she'd done and she was sorry and blah, blah, blah. But after 6 months of letters and cards and postage and parcels that were only ever to my son, nothing ever to me, I was just like, oh, okay, here we go. That's it. She's had her opportunity and she's not interested. So, and you've got to do what you think is right. I mean, it's easy enough for me to say, oh, don't open the post and everything, but I can understand that desperation. I remember exactly where I was when I gave up. I was walking, I'd gone to the post box, I was walking back to the front door, so I was on like this veranda thing that we had outside the front of the house. I was just walking up to the front door to go back into the house again, and I ripped open the card, and it just said, lots of love from Nanny. And I was like, well, so there's nothing for me, no message for me, no sorry, no nothing, I'm not even referred to. It was addressed to my son. The card was for my son. Nothing, no note for me, no little gift, no nothing. And I thought, okay, that's it, I give up. I can't do this anymore. I'm torturing myself. Still hoping and expecting that my mother might show that she gives a damn. And she didn't. She showed consistently by her actions that she didn't. And she's not done anything since in the 8 years to make me think that she does. So that's what I suggest you do. That's really important. And it's particularly important if you're dealing with a narcissist who has been physically abusive before. Really important that you come up with a really strong protection plan in that case, that maybe you put up cameras, maybe you put up additional gates. The other thing as well is to consider, if it's convenient for you, is to consider moving house. Now I would say, my parents knew about my first house. They haven't known about my last 2 houses. Okay. And I tell you, it feels so good. It feels so good to know that they don't know where I am. And the other I mean, so don't do it if it's, you know, difficult for you, if you've got jobs there and everything, all the stuff. However, I will say it's a relief to know that they don't know where I am, even now after 8 years. But if you did move house, be very, very careful who you tell, because this information can get out. They will want to find out where you are, just because they don't want you having like the upper hand, that you know where you are and they can't get hold of you. It's not about love. It's not about caring. It's about power and control. And they hate the feeling that they don't have power and control over you anymore, because they don't even know where you live. So that's what it's all about. My father got my sister-in-law to call my mother-in-law, so my brother's wife to call my mother-in-law, so they're not related to each other, for our telephone number, because we changed numbers, and she told them. And so this is, it's not because they care, it's not because they want to know how you're doing and how your kids are, it's because they want to mind you. And then she phoned me to guilt me, to try to get me to contact her. So this is what they'll do. They'll be so desperate that they'll contact people that they don't want to speak to. They'll go on Facebook and they'll look up your old school friends to just try and get hold of you. So don't think there's no low that they won't stoop to, because they will stoop to that low. So I hope that this helps. That's what it's all about. I'm helping you. I'm trying to help you here through your no contact, especially beginning days, because it's such an emotionally difficult time when you've got all this practical stuff that needs as well. Like if you do have any ties with the narcissist as well, you want to untangle yourself from that. So please know I'm here for you. I want to help and support you as much as I can. So please, if you're struggling, please reach out. Clare, CLARE, comebackbrighter@gmail.com.